Every year there's massive expectations set on the Philadelphia 76ers, but in the biggest games of the season, they completely fall apart. And it all starts at the top with Joel Embiid, and this season as well, James Harden. So here's why the 76ers are in massive trouble this offseason, and probably even more trouble than you actually think. Let's get into it. So you might be thinking, here's a Toronto fan running his mouth about the Philadelphia 76ers as we go through this video, but it's all about the weight of the expectations. And the Philadelphia 76ers, the fans, media, and the players themselves put so much pressure on themselves by setting these very high expectations. And I mean, it's warranted. They need to set these high expectations. They need to put pressure on themselves because they have a damn good team here, but once again, they falter in the biggest moments. But before we go into that, remind you guys that this is Amateur Hour TV, the second channel in the Amateur Hour Production Network. And on this channel, I go through additional NBA-related content and videos just like this, where it's a little bit less formal than my main channel videos. I can let the personality come through a little bit more and just talk about things I want to discuss. Today, I want to discuss the Philadelphia 76ers. This video took a little bit of time here. We've had a full week almost to let that Game 7 loss to the Boston Celtics simmer. And the 76ers, once again, as I said, when it comes to the biggest games, the ones that define a team's era, they always fall short. They always fall short. Joel Embiid, finally he won his MVP this season. He deserved it. I don't think he's the best player in the world, but as far as the most valuable player of the NBA season, he was that. But when it came to the playoffs, he was far off of that again. And the Philadelphia 76ers suffered as a result. Joel Embiid has never played in a conference finals in his career. Never played in a conference finals. And there's all these discussions about Jokic compared to Embiid because they play in the same position. There shouldn't really be a discussion. Jokic has been to the conference finals more times than he's lost in the first round. Joel Embiid has never been to a conference finals. In fact, he's only ever won 5 playoff series. Only 5. All in the first round, of course. Here are the teams Joel Embiid has somehow managed to beat in the first round of the playoffs. In 2018, they beat a Miami Heat team where that was the Josh Richardson year. Where, I guess they were impressed enough to trade Jimmy Butler for Josh Richardson a year later. But the Josh Richardson Heat in 2018. Nice job. In 2019, they beat the Brooklyn Nets, led by D'Angelo Russell. That team, that fun Brooklyn Nets team that overachieved a little bit. I think they finished 7th. They beat that team. Nice job. 2021, they beat the Wizards, led by Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal. Easy. 2022, they beat the Toronto Raptors. And you know what? That's probably the best team Joel Embiid has ever beaten in the playoffs, because this year they beat the Brooklyn Nets team. Obviously not a playoff team, but they had that buffer because they had KD, Kyrie at the start of the season. Easy series win once again for the Philadelphia 76ers. So those easy ones, yeah, they win the easy ones, except for a couple years ago when they lost to the Atlanta Hawks in the second round. That should have been an easy one, but they mostly win the easy ones. What they never do is rise up to a battle against a difficult opponent. They never rise up and beat a team that they shouldn't beat. The Boston Celtics were favored this year. They were favored this year to win that series against the Philadelphia 76ers. But once you put yourself in a position where you are up 3-2 in that series, going home for Game 6, there's not really a ton of excuses you can have for that team. It's just a sorry-ass performance in Game 6. Not too bad in Game 6. It was bad, but not too bad. But a sorry-ass performance in Game 7. The team always falls apart in the big games. You can talk about Doc Rivers, but you know what? That Game 7, I think Doc Rivers should have gotten fired. That Game 7 was not on him. Jason Tatum had 51 points and outstanding game, and Doc did everything he could to stop him. He threw doubles, single coverage, bringing guys up to him on the perimeter, hedging off of him. They tried so many different schemes to stop Jason Tatum, different defenders, different matchups. It didn't work. He was cooking. Not going to blame him. But what you can blame, James Harden once again in an elimination game doesn't show up. It seems like throughout his entire career, every time his team needs him, he vanishes. Elimination games. He has a knack for going 2 of 11 in elimination games. So what's bad about 2 of 11 is, number one, 2 of 11 is a wretched field goal percentage. What's also bad about that is that you're James Harden only taking 11 shots when your team needs you. This year he improved. He was 3 of 11, so he still only took 11 shots when his team needed him to take on more shots. He only made 3. At least it's 1 more than 2. But the biggest problem with this team starts at the top with Joel Embiid. And before we go into it, we'll preface it by saying Joel Embiid wasn't quite healthy. You're playing, it's the playoffs. A lot of people are playing hurt. I get maybe this guy suffers a little bit more than other people, but it's every year. We can't be making the same excuses for this guy every single season, right? There's all the amount of other players who get ripped on for their playoff performances. I have no idea why Joel Embiid does not get the same stick that everybody else gets. Because in this Game 7, Joel Embiid went 5 of 18 with 15 points. This is the freaking league MVP. The league MVP who led the league in scoring this season with, was it over 33 points per game? In the playoffs this season, he averaged 23 points per game. He averaged 23 points per game. Now, the argument, well, he's getting doubled. He's facing a great defense in the Boston Celtics. Yada, yada, yada. I got news for you. If you're a good player, and you're in the playoffs, you're playing against good teams because you're in the playoffs. The best teams make the playoffs. The best teams advance to the next round. So when you go to the second round, yeah, you're going to get a good team, especially when you're not the 1 seed. Well, the Milwaukee Bucks lost, but you're the 3 seed. Your expectation is your second round is going to be an away series against a team that finished ahead of you. Welcome to the freaking NBA. And guess what? If you're a good player, let alone the league MVP, who do you think they're going to focus their defense on? It's you. I don't hear these excuses coming for other people around the league. I certainly don't hear these excuses for Jokic. When Jokic gets doubled, well, he just finds the open guy. If Jokic is in single coverage, well, he just scores himself. Joel Embiid couldn't do anything. And if you go to the Game 6, the game at home, where it was close late, and the Sixers had a chance to close out the series, the last, 5 minutes of that game, you watch that back, did Joel Embiid touch the ball? I'm not even exaggerating. Did Joel Embiid touch the basketball in the last 5 minutes of a potential closeout Game 6? If he did, I can't remember it, because he certainly didn't do anything of note in that section of the game. So Joel Embiid, sure, he talked about other guys needing to step up as well. He got good games. He got a great PJ Tucker game in Game 7. Maxey played well. $39 million Tobias Harris had a pretty good game. Not a $39 million game, but he had a good game. But James Harden and Joel Embiid, once again, do not come through for the team. And that's a difference, because you go to that Game 6, close game between the Celtics and Sixers. Tatum had a horrible game. One of the worst games, maybe the worst game he's ever played. But then he came alive in the fourth quarter. Because you know what? Good players, when their team needs a win, they find a way to get their team that win. And in Game 7, my guy put up, not my guy, I hate Tatum. This guy put up 51 points in Game 7. That's the difference. Jokic in the series against the Phoenix Suns. All this talk about him not being a good defender. He held his own against KD and Booker that entire series. Put up some outrageous numbers. Got his team to the next round. Something Joel Embiid has never done. Have you ever... Can you recall a single, legacy game Joel Embiid has had in the playoffs? Can you recall one? Reaching... Game 3, 2019 against the Raptors. I think that was the airplane game, Great game. Put his team up 2-1. Gave his team home court advantage in a series where they were the away seed, right? And you can also go to last season, Game 3 against the Raptors. The buzzer beater to put his team up 3-0. That was crazy, right? Sure, that Game 3 one, 2019 didn't even win that series. Last season, yeah, that put the series to bed. Put them up 3-0. Raptors got it to 6, but that put the series to bed. So, okay. We'll give him that. But how about a closeout game? How about an elimination game where his team needs him the most? Not one game. I can't remember it, but there isn't one. There's not one game where he's been able to do that. And you know what? Finally, after all these years of not making the conference finals, at least this year, there was a little bit of accountability taken from Embiid. There was at least a little bit of, I've got to be better. There was a lot of it. He held himself accountable. Finally did it. Put a little bit of a slight against his teammates in the process, but really didn't throw anybody under the bus like he did, last season. Threw a few people under the bus. like he did 2 seasons ago, threw Ben Simmons under the bus, maybe rightfully so. At least he held himself a little bit accountable. So what's next for the 76ers? This was, since the Butler team, before they chose Tobias Harris for Jimmy Butler, this was the best team they ever put around Joel Embiid. That was a well-built team, a deep team, tons of weapons, everything he could have asked for. But they still didn't make the conference finals. So what's next? Tobias Harris is making $39 million next season. Only one more year of Tobias Harris. You only got one more year of that contract. But James Harden, the big thing last offseason was he took a pay cut to stay and keep the team competitive for this season. And they brought in some decent guys. Hey, they brought in DeAnthony Melton, good pickup. I thought it was overrated pickup last summer, but it was a good pickup nonetheless. They brought in Daniel House. That was an overrated pickup. People were gushing over that one, but nah, not great. But it was still a good team. But now James Harden's a free agent. Now James Harden's going to want more money. Can you move out of Tobias Harris to make room for James Harden? I don't know. Does James Harden want to be in Philadelphia? Do you want James Harden in Philadelphia? What else do you do if he leaves? If he leaves, now you got to get Tyrese Maxey to step up big time, big time. Put him next to Melton. Like, that's a pretty solid guard duo, but is that contender worthy? Maxey can make that big jump, but there's still deficiencies there. That's still a pretty small duo. PJ Tucker, is he still going to be there? Tobias Harris, is he still going to be there? I just can't really envision a way this team improves themselves this offseason. James Harden, I expect to leave. Tobias Harris, I expect, like, you probably can't get off of that contract still. You got to force, but you got to give Tyrese Maxey that bigger role. But is that the caliber of a team that's going to be even better and get this team to that conference finals next season? I don't think so. And there's also a question mark now about Joel Embiid. Is Joel Embiid worthy of leading a team in the playoffs? Does Joel Embiid rise to the occasion? Because Jokic gets all this flack for his playoff performances. And anytime there's conversations about Embiid and Jokic in the playoffs, or at all their talent levels, it's always, well, Embiid's the better defender. Embiid's way better defense. He's the better player. Not in the playoffs. You seen Jokic playing defense in this Lakers series so far? Holding his own. Like I said, playing against KD and Booker, holding his own. Did you see Game 7 of that Celtics series for the Sixers? I'm sorry, but if you're considered to be a formidable defender, which he is, but if it's like such a big deal he's a better defender, no opposition team should be hunting him when they're playing offense. And guess what? In Game 7, the Celtics hunted Joel Embiid. They put him in pick and rolls. They brought him up high, and they just shot over him time after time after time. The Celtics are a jump shooting team, and they were jump shooting over Joel Embiid's head, and he had no answer for it. No answer for it. That doesn't happen to Jokic very often. That hasn't happened to him in the playoffs. Maybe in the regular season there's some problems, but in the playoffs it hasn't happened. Because guess what? That's a guy that steps up. That's just because they're compared so often that Jokic is the example I'm using. But there's a guy who steps up when his team needs it. And you go to Joel Embiid, very seldom seen that he steps up for his team when he needs it. I don't think Joel Embiid you trade. I don't think that's it at all. I think you still build around Joel Embiid. This is the MVP after all. But Joel, I mean, at least he starts the process. But he's got to hold himself even further accountable, because if he wants to win a playoff, a second round series for the first time ever, he's got to step up. Because, like I said, guess what? You're the best player in the league, apparently with the MVP. You're the best player on your team. You're in the playoff second round. It's a good team with good defenders that are going to focus their defense on you. The best players find a way. If Joel Embiid is one of the best players, he needs to find a way as well. So that's all for today's video. A little bit of a Philadelphia 76ers rant, because I'm sick of all the goddamn talk about this team. For them to every year shit the bed in an elimination game. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the slander on guys who don't deserve it, and I'm sick of the praise for guys like Embiid who don't deserve it. This guy's got to step up. The Sixers, even if he does, they're still in trouble for next season. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to Amateur TV. Hopefully in the offseason, some more general NBA content like this. We'll see you again next time for another video.